Hello and welcome to Cricket House Gaming. Here at Cricket House Gaming, we like to explore the gameplay of simulation games, usually through a series of Let's Plays. In this episode, we will continue to explore the gameplay of Democracy 4. Democracy 4 is a political sim that lets you choose the role of a world leader and govern a country. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here, welcome, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Today, we are going to continue to explore the gameplay as Prime Minister of Canada. We recently had an election and we were re-elected to a third term as Prime Minister of Canada. We received 60% of the vote. Citizens Alliance received 32.8%. 16.9% people did not vote. When I hit that button, we will begin the next term. We will be entering the first year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's begin the next term. We have the option to post re-election reshuffle of our cabinet. You can take this opportunity of this election win to reshuffle your cabinet ministers right now without losing political capital. If you need to throw out some disloyal ministers and replace them with loyal, talented replacements, now is the time. I'm going to leave the cabinet as is. There's an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. Oil companies are keen to get permission to drill for oil in the part of the country protected as a wildlife refuge. The oil supplies under the refuge are considerable, but drilling would have a negative impact on the environment. Allow drilling. There are literally billions of barrels of oil right there on our soil, and the current law is preventing us from drilling for it. Instead, we are importing oil from other countries. Environmental impact would be minimal when you consider the gains that drilling makes in terms of energy security. Nobody wants to spoil the environment, but the alternative is reliance on foreign oil. Prevent drilling. This valuable wildlife refuge would be devastated by oil exploration. This is one of our nation's great national treasures, and it would be criminal to wreck it just to boost domestic oil production. Drilling in this part of the country will not entirely remove our dependence on foreign oil, but it will spoil our natural environment for future generations. While Canada is known for exporting oil, I'm going to prevent drilling because our country is moving away from fossil fuels. Capitalists are unhappy at -4%. The environmentalists are happy at +6%. Private space industry. The private space industry is growing noticeably in our country. Although historically big space projects have been undertaken by governments, advances in technology now mean that there is now a huge potential market for commercialization of space exploration and space travel, including private satellites, space tourism, and even asteroid mining. This does increase stability. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that we have a potentially bad situation, social media addiction on our hands if we do not act. Budget report. International credit rating agencies rate our government as a double B. This is a bad sign and is pushing up the rate of interest we pay on our debt. We must address this. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as loyal. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be passable. Polls report. The people are indifferent to your government. We estimate getting 62% of the vote in an election. Let us continue. We have 16 political capital to spend. Regulate social media. Social media can be fun and even beneficial, but regulation may be required to ensure that it's not full of fake news and conspiracy theories. It's handling a large megaphone to the extremists. Nobody likes the idea of government dictating what is said online, but without regulation in some form, social media could cause some serious damage to our society. This will reduce liberalism. The youth won't be happy. The liberals are not happy, but the conservatives are happy. This is only 19% popular with the vote, but we are in the first term of our first year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada, so I'm going to implement this policy. Right now it has age restriction. Let's leave it at age restrictions and we'll apply the changes. We have 5 political capital remaining. We still have environmental protests. We are still facing a gig economy. We still have obesity, and we still have respiratory disease. Microgeneration grants. These grants are given to citizens to help subsidize the cost of energy microgeneration systems such as solar panels and wind turbines. This is a good way to take advantage of some people's desire to make their personal step towards cleaner, greener energy, and will increase the country's overall energy efficiency. This is 100% popular with the vote. This will increase energy efficiency. The environmentalists will be happy. CO2 emissions will be reduced, the environment will improve, and the energy industry will be reduced slightly. Let us spend 2 political capital in this. We will raise it to high, and let's apply the changes. We have 3 political capital to spend. We are going to put some political capital into subsidized school buses. State subsidies for school buses ensure that every school kid has an efficient and safe journey to school, whilst reducing the number of short school run trips carried out by parents, thus reducing the traffic on the roads. Parents are also happier knowing that there are proper approved school buses. This is 100% popular popular with the vote. We will invest 2 political capital in this. We will apply the changes. We have 1 political capital remaining. Charity tax relief. This policy is designed to encourage the wealthy or anybody who pays tax to donate to charity by deducting some of their charitable donations from their income when calculating various taxes. Let us use our last political capital in this and let's apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our first term, of our first year, of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the second term of our first year, of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Increased school inspection. There is an urgent policy question that requires your immediate attention. There were concerns that school standards are slipping and that the current regime for examining teaching methods and schools is not sufficient. Campaigners suggest toughening up on the system with much more frequent inspections. Education is a service like any other, and it is essential that the parents know what they are getting for their money or taxes. Decent teachers should have nothing to fear from the extra scrutiny. What parent would oppose greater checks on the way in which their children are being educated? Keep the current system. Teaching children is difficult enough as it is, as well as being poorly paid and undertaken by dedicated professionals. This proposal would simply keep extra bureaucracy and take more time away from actual teaching. It's insulting to suggest that dedicated public service workers like teachers need further scrutiny. We have a problem with bureaucracy on our hands, so I am going to keep our current system so that our bureaucracy does not increase. Parents are unhappy at -3%. State employees are happy at +5%. Budget report: the International Credit Ratings Agency rates our government as a BB. This is a bad sign and is pushing up the rate of interest we pay on our debt. We must address this. Election report: our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more popular. Last quarter we added 140,898 new members and 23,483 new activists. Economic forecast: good news, the global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report: the loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Polls report: people are indifferent to your government. We estimate getting 65% of the vote in an election. Let's look at our cabinet. They seem to be doing about the same. They all seem pretty happy though, so I'm gonna leave them alone. We have 16 political capital to spend. Let's take a look at our policies. I want to affect the bureaucracy issue that we have going on, but I think that's 20. Anti-corruption agency is 20. Childcare provision: by giving state subsidies for childcare, we can ensure that more parents return to the workforce after having children and therefore benefit the economy. Although this can be expensive, it is also a distortion of the market. It is popular with parents. Let's implement this. This will increase gender equality. This will increase productivity, and I'm hoping that this will reduce the gig economy. Let us apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at this end of our second term of our first year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the third term of our first year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. There is a regional war. War has broken out in a neighboring country, causing tensions along our border with them. We see an influx of refugees as well as trade being stemmed. There are also concerns that a conflict in such close proximity will reduce the stability of our own nation. Immigration is up at +25%. Patriot membership is up at +8%. Business confidence is down at -11%. Stability is down at -11%. And illegal immigration is up at +25%. Situation imminent. Our data is showing that we have a potentially bad situation bureaucracy on our hands if we do not act soon. Budget report: our credit rating is worryingly just a BB. We need to fix this either through growing our GDP, cutting expenditure, or increasing taxation. Polls report: the polls are optimistic. If an election was held tomorrow, we suspect we would get 73% of the vote. Election report: our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more popular. In the last quarter, we added 295,071 new members and 49,178 new activists. Economic forecast: good news, the global economy is doing well and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report: the loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. We have 19 political capital. We are short of 1 political capital of implementing an anti-corruption agency. We have to figure out how to get 1 more political capital so we can implement this and deal with our bureaucracy. Labor laws would lower the gig economy. Let's take a look at labor laws. Right now it's balanced. We could use 6 political capital and lower it to pro-employer. Labor laws are basically the restriction on a worker's right to strike. Capitalists argue that such restrictions are vital to prevent key workers such as power station workers, policemen, and train drivers from holding the country ransom. Trade unionists consider the right to strike to be fundamental and not open to negotiation. This would increase the work week. I want to see if this affects our gig economy. Looks like it would lower our gig economy, and that's what I want to do. Let us use 6 political capital. Let's apply the changes. We have 13 political capital to spend. Despite the failure of tobacco companies to admit it, there is a good reason to believe that smoking has negative effects on health. This is used as a justification for taxing tobacco. Cynics point out that the government benefits hugely on a tax on a product it's supposedly against. Health campaigners encourage the tax as a way to encourage a more healthy population. This is not popular with the vote, but perhaps this will deal with our respiratory disease. We will use 8 political capital and we will increase this to 30%. And this will raise $0.30 billion. Let's apply the changes. We have 5 political capital to spend. We have a war on our borders. We can address our refugee policy. Refugee policy. Most countries accept that they have a moral responsibility to take in migrants from disaster zones or war-torn countries. But there's a strong debate on how loose these restrictions and limits should be, especially if climate change and other factors lead to a large rise in global refugees. This is 92% popular with the vote. We are going to be using 3 political capital and increase it to no checks. Let's apply the changes. We have 2 political capital remaining. Recycling. Supporters of recycling argue that dumping waste in landfills just isn't a long-term solution, and the government needs to show the way by providing facilities to recycle as many waste materials as possible. This might include recycling newspapers, cardboard, bottles, and even some plastics. This is 100% popular with the vote. The environmentalists will love this, and it will help our environment in Canada. Let us use 1 political capital in this to invest in recycling centers. Let's apply the changes. We have 1 political capital remaining. Not only are free school meals a way of redistributing wealth by ensuring everyone can afford to feed their children, but it also is a way to ensure that children eat healthy rather than surviving purely on junk food. Let's go all the way to the end to maximum. Let us apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, and thus we are at the end of our 3rd term of our first year of our 3rd term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's hit that button. We will now be entering the 4th term of our first year of our 3rd term as Prime Minister of Canada. Let's see how we did. Unemployment is up. LGBT lessons in school, sex education in school is always a political football, and now it's back in play as the issue of educating children about the existence of same-sex couples and relationships has hit the news. You have to take a stand on whether or not to support LGBT topics in school lessons. Support LGBT teaching. The whole point of school is to educate and prepare children for the real world, and it's obvious same-sex relationships are part of society. Imagine the point of view of a child who questions their own sexuality. Surely it's best for them to learn the truth from school teachers without pressure from religious leaders of parents with extreme views. Oppose LGBT teaching. Are children not overwhelmed and confused enough about sex and relationships without us introducing extreme liberal propaganda about gender fluidity into the mix? School is not the place to get bogged down with these issues, and school children are too young to be questioning their gender anyway. I'm going to support LGBT teaching. If we are teaching about heterosexual relations, then we should be teaching our children about LGBT relations as well. Let's support LGBT teaching. The Liberals are happy at plus 11%. The youth is happy at plus 6%. Conservatives are unhappy at negative 15%. And the religious are unhappy at negative 15%. Budget report. The international credit rating agencies rate our government as BB. This is a bad sign and is pushing up the rate of interest we pay on our debt. We must address this. Polls report. Polls are optimistic. If an election was held tomorrow, we suspect we would get 77% of the vote. Election report. Our party, the Radical Reform Party, is getting more popular. In the last quarter, we added 447,297 new members and 24,849 new activists. Economic forecast. Good news. The global economy is doing well, and this is having a positive effect on our GDP. Cabinet report. The loyalty of your ministers can best be described as trustworthy. Their effectiveness is generally considered to be adequate. Let's take a look at how our ministers are performing. They seem to be doing pretty good. We have 20 political capital, and thus we can implement that anti-corruption agency that I have been trying to implement for over 5 terms. Anti-corruption agency establishes an anti-corruption enforcement agency. Eliminating corruption may be mandated, but detecting perpetrators and persecuting them is the only way to stamp out abuse of power for personal gain. The more resources an anti-corruption agency has, the more powerful the offenders that they can bring to justice. This is going to reduce corruption, and it will lower state employees. It's not popular with the vote, but we have bureaucracy on our hand. Let us implement this policy. We are going to go all the way to the end with this, and we're going to apply the changes. We have 0 political capital to spend, as we spent all our political capital pivotal in implementing an anti-corruption agency. Thus, we are at the end of our fourth term of our first year of our third term as Prime Minister of Canada, and we are at the end of this episode. Thank you so much for stopping by our Crooked House. If you like what you saw, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you want to follow our future episodes. It really helps us out. Have a great week. See you soon.